everyone. It's been a while since I last spoke to you. The last time we attempted this was just after the by-election in Britain Central. As my internet hasn't been stable in the last 4 months, so this is why we haven't done a live stream in a long time, a proper one. We've got a special one today. It's not going to be a long one. It's only going to be about half hour, 45 minutes. There's a lot to talk about. But first of all, I'd like to say I hope you are all well, and I do apologise for this. We're not having stable internet for so long. I've got some stable internet at the moment because I'm staying at a friend's house. Thank you very much, Lisa and Howell, for letting me stay. I hope you're enjoying your holiday if you watch this when you get back. Today's a bit of a unique live stream. We're focusing on one subject and one subject only. I hope to be joined at 11 o'clock by Councillor Rhys Goode, representative for Nottingham Royal, and Cabinet Member for Housing and Wellbeing. We'll talk more, but I'll give you a brief overview of what happened. As many of you know, I've been living in emergency accommodation arranged through council. For that time, for the majority of that time, I've been in the Atlantic Hotel with other residents, which are opposite the side of the road is Fairways, and there were people there in the same situation as myself. This week, residents were told about a week ago by the owner that beyond midday Friday is gone, everybody would have to leave. Nobody knew what's going on. I first found out Thursday, Monday morning. And from there, I made a phone call to Amanda Williams, and the ball started rolling from there. And it got crazier and crazier as the week went on. We won't be focusing on what the root causes of this were. That should come later, hopefully with an in-depth investigation by council to make sure it doesn't happen again. Today we're going to focus on residents, which I myself was one, and the effort that the council put in today, not just councillors, there were many of them who put in a massive amount of effort, but the housing department as a whole and other outside organisations for something that, as we understand, is very unique to happen, actually. But we'll talk more about that in a bit. First of all, I'm going to personally thank some people that really helped us this week, that really helped the residents and they focused on the residents and did what they could. First of all, Amanda Williams, it all started with a phone call on Monday to Amanda, and it snowballed from there. From there, Freya Bledsoe also got involved, Alex Williams, Stephen Bledsoe as well. I'm sure there are many other councillors involved, but they're one I've actually heard or dealt with or had some contact with about what's been going on. I do apologise for the background. I can't stop the sunlight coming in, and this is the only position I can get the computer at the moment. So as I said, I'm hoping to be joined by Councillor Goode at 11 o'clock. I've had nothing to say that he isn't coming. No, nothing to say that he isn't coming. So we've got 5 minutes now. It's been a very emotional week, not just me, but for many of the residents. There's been a lot of fear, there's been a lot of desperation on residents' parts and upset and tears. Some resident ended up in hospital on Wednesday due to what's been going on. But it's been a strange week. As far as I know, most of the residents are safe now. They are safe. I have spoken to a few yesterday. I visited a few yesterday as well, and they're safe. They're happy. Um, Obviously, not totally happy because of what we've all gone through this week, but they're doing well, and they're a lot more positive now than what they were even first thing Friday morning. Not everything was completely sorted, and we had to be out at midday on Friday of the two hotels, the Fairway and the Atlantic. Um, Thank you to Owen Donovan for doing an article this week. A quick thank you to Owen. Wasn't the article I hoped. It was a great article. There was nothing wrong with it. It wasn't the article I hoped. I hoped that the residents would be front and centre and they would be the primary issue. It became secondary in the story, but at least the story was out there. The press were contacted. BBC were on their way, and then suddenly they turned around and left. Turned around and went back to the BBC before they got there. And Wales Online spoke to call a few of us residents back and to get our thoughts and do an interview with us. And it never happened. We don't know why, but we'll see. As soon as Rhys goes on, we'll get into more detail. As I said, we won't be talking about what root causes of this and what's gone on to it. We're talking about this week, the residents and what's happened at DCBC with the staff and the other outside agencies, and we will say who they are. It's, as I say, it's been a stressful week, but we're getting there. There is positive news for residents. I won't share what it is because at the moment it's personal for the residents, and each one is an individual case at this point now. And I hope the ones I haven't been able to speak to or to visit are okay if they see this. I hope they're okay and doing well. As I said, it was a massive, massive effort this week. And as soon as Councillor Goode does join us, talk more about the effort that everybody in BCC has put in. I will like to say that it's great with what's going on in Westminster, the press, and that politics didn't get in the way. Politics didn't come into this at all this week. It wasn't anything to do with politics. It was a crisis that was happening, and politics have pushed aside. Nobody was trying to get one up on anybody else. It was everybody pulling together in the same direction, and it was great to see the outcome of that at the end. And I hope something more like that in the future and happens, but it doesn't take a crisis for that to happen. I think miracles can happen when councils work together, and we'll see. Anyway, I'm just going to sip of coffee. My throat's sore. As I said, it's been a stressful week, and I'm now suffering the after effects of what's happened this week. But I'm hoping in a minute or two I'll be joined by Councillor Goode. If not, I'll continue and I'll give the story as I see it and the praise. It won't be a long one. I may do another live stream tonight. I'll see, but I won't be talking about this. We'll talk about other things in the county. I'm thinking I'll make hay while I've got a stable internet connection, and I'll see if I can persuade some nice councillors to come and join us to talk about other things that have been going on in the county and other things, hopefully more positive things, and we'll see what happens from that point. Yeah, it's I have missed doing this, um, but without stable internet, it's been very difficult. And I thought there's no point saying I'm doing a live stream and then it will go wrong as I'm trying to do it, like it happened after the by-election at Bridgend Central. Um, I'll give him a minute or two. I've got nothing come to me on my phone, so I'll give it a minute or two for Councillor Goode to join. So I'll keep rambling on for now. Yeah, it's been things, a lot happening. It was the Jam in the Car. I went to the Jam in the Castle event. I helped out there. That was an amazing event. I've got to say, I didn't get to the Broadlands Fun Day, unfortunately, but I heard that was brilliant, and Ian Spiller and everybody else involved needs to be congratulated on what I heard is a very successful event again. Yeah, there's lots of other things in the pipeline, other things for next year. And we'll see how it goes. Ooh, my phone. No. Anyway, okay, I'm going to start with what happened this week. As I said before, it was the owner of the Atlantic and Fairways Hotel told residents, I believe it was a week last Saturday, come Friday midday, everybody wouldn't be there anymore because something to do with contracts and everything. We're not going to go into the reasons why. I didn't hear till first thing Monday morning. I was completely oblivious for a couple of days. And Monday morning, a phone call was made to Councillor Amanda Williams because it keeps getting reported 39. It may be 39, but we believe there was actually a couple more. So roughly about 39 people were in danger of being out on the streets, sleeping on the streets come midday Friday. And we've seen the weather this weekend. That would not have been very good. There's many residents there who had mental health issues, physical issues. We know about my issues because I've discussed them on the channel before, my mental health issues and things like that. And it was a massive effort. So it's all started with Amanda. And oh, hang on, we've been joined. I'll just add Councillor Goode to the live stream. Thank you, Councillor Goode, for joining me.
Morning, mate.
I've been rambling for a couple of minutes. I did the intro, and I think this is important, so I'll say it now. This week, politics didn't get in the way of anything. Everybody worked together. It wasn't a success or failure for one party or one group or anything. It was good to see politics was pushed aside and everybody pushed in the same direction for once. And that's what we should do more of. It's a shame that it takes a crisis to do that, which I know most people say, oh, it's not a crisis, but for people like me who was a resident, it felt like a crisis to us. I've explained a little bit that midday Friday just gone, we were told by the owner last weekend that nobody would be in the hotels anymore. And I said, we're not going to concentrate on why, the reasons why. We're going to talk about the residents and the effort that you, other councillors and the housing team staff and outside agencies, massive effort they put in this week. Because I think that will be the focus at the end. We can talk about all the ins and outs later in another day further down when we know what's actually gone on. So from your point of view, because you being the cabinet member for housing and wellbeing, everything starts with you at this point because it's your department and you're the, I suppose, director of the choir that's going on. So from your point of view, I know it started beforehand, but Monday really this week was when it's ramped up massively. So you were in and out of meetings. And I bet it wasn't great because you're a new councillor, and as I said, you did fantastic work. All the councillors did fantastic work, so the staff. But from your point of view, what was it like first thing Monday morning, knowing that this is going to be a week that you wish you were actually on holiday for once, but we're glad you weren't.
No, so, well, I mean, firstly, Luke, thanks for having me on. I mean, I think,
thanks for joining me.
Oh, it's a pleasure. I think obviously Monday morning was never somewhere we want to be, and I think you're right in saying that. The what happened in the last week was something that no one would want to have to deal with. And we should celebrate that we, as a community, like everyone, like from all levels, from the residents to the local authority to our partners, have all pulled together to try and. I don't know if you just lost me a little bit there.
Yeah, I did lose you slightly.
Sorry, my internet is never being rubbish. But it's yeah. I mean, I think Monday morning was mostly, as with the rest of the week, was okay. Well, this has happened. How do we make sure that we deliver the best outcomes for everyone? And to be blunt, on Monday morning, I wasn't convinced that we would be able to deliver good outcomes, and it could have gone very differently. It's the outcomes in the end were due to some real hard yards done by a tremendous amount of people to find good outcomes for everyone. And I think that's that, and as I've said to you, like, one of the things that I think needs to be reflected more on is, at the end of the day, residents in those hotels could have kicked off, could have been very angry and not willing to work with us. And I think what I've reflected on is that everyone recognized the situation that was happening, and everyone at every level pulled together to try and get the best outcome. And I think that's something that I think is really remarkable.
I will say, I know you're in a meeting on Tuesday evening with Amanda, Mark Shepherd, and various others, and the meeting was informed that the residents had gone to press. And there's a few memorandums, but you yourself said, why shouldn't they? This is what they have every right to, which is impressive, because we know most councils try to avoid as much bad press as possible. It's things like that, but at the end, you didn't care about that. You cared about the residents at that point. Everybody else who worked with us did, but I think the biggest problem for us as residents this week, you said to me on Wednesday, was the communication that was coming from all sides. Because everybody was saying different things, the owners, the council, and it was just so much poor communication going through that some of us residents didn't know where we were coming and going. There were a few residents that were a bit, I'll say, prickly. I was one of them. We know that. But it didn't get to the point where there was physical or verbal abuse and shouting or anything like that. Even when Amanda came down on Tuesday, you came down Wednesday and Thursday, and I keep thinking, is it Martin Morgan?
Martin Morgan.
Yeah, and he came down 3 days, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. There was no real threatening or real verbal abuse, which I think the residents need to be proud of themselves for that, because it could have, as you said, quite easily have descended into something a lot worse.
Yeah.
But
yeah, absolutely.
it was good that we had Amanda come down Tuesday, then you came down Wednesday and Thursday with Martin, and Martin was down from Wednesday till the last, apart from because I was one of the actually last people to leave with another gentleman, and Mark had gone just before that, but he was there till nearly everybody was gone sorted, and he was even sorting problems out up to 10 to 12
Yeah,
at that
yeah,
point that were cropping up. So it was good we had that somebody in that position who has the authority just ring somebody up and said, no, we get this done
yeah,
now
yeah,
at
yeah.
at the point rather than in the office, and which would
Mm,
make communication a lot harder. But
mm,
as it's BCBC staff put in a mammoth effort this week.
yeah,
It's not something we ever want them to do like this. It's not something we ever planned to do, but they stepped up when was needed. But as much as we praised BCBC, it wasn't just BCBC. We had Pobble down speaking to us. We had the Woolwich working on our behalf as well. We had the housing authorities scrambling around, and other people,
yeah,
even private landlords, have been trying to find
yeah,
places as well.
yeah,
So it's not just one group of people, BCBCs, that this is successful. The housing authorities have done their part. The support groups like Woolwich and Pobble did theirs, and private landlords in the area. Because I'll be going into a HMO at some point this week in a private landlord. So they've been very flexible and helped us as well. So
yeah.
it's actually seen a county pull together in a
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I
situation.
mean, one of the things that Carys Lord said, who's the chief officer for housing in BCBC, she said, it really feels this week like Team Bridgend happened, and it
Yeah.
was one of those moments where, everyone, every single person that we spoke to, really pulled out all the stops to try and deliver a good outcome, and as you said, like, it could have gone very differently. It would have been very,
Oh,
it was a hairline on
yeah.
it could have gone very differently, and that has to be looked at as a real success. That I've reflected on it in that it's all too easy to look at you know
The re-
RSLs and others as not willing to be collaborative partners, but actually this week really showed that when the chips are down and things are happening, people were willing to really pull out
yeah.
the stops. I can't even imagine the number of like staff hours
Yeah.
across organizations that went into this week. Like it's when you consider the cost at the end of the day, I imagine it's going to be quite significant, because the number of hours, and that was because people genuinely really wanted to make sure that this did come out well, and I think that is something that should be celebrated. And like you said at the start, like, it is one of those moments where it's not about politics. It's one of those moments where you just everyone just wants the best outcome, and we do need to look for more opportunities, I think, like that
Yeah.
in society, and more opportunities for us to do that. And I think it really showed our borough the best that it can be.
Yeah. When it comes across, but that's the problem. Yeah, we only seem to see the best of people pulling together and putting things aside when crisis happens. It would be nice if we could see that without the crisis part, if so to
Yeah,
speak. But I, as I said before you came, I've actually spoken to a few residents on the phone yesterday, and I've been round and visited a few. The overwhelming feeling is gratitude and relief, and thanks for and the thankfulness for the BCBC staff to get what done. Most people feel happy and safe, which is the main thing. And I know there's a lot of people out there who are very thankful to the BCBC staff. Um, so I did it yesterday because I've been keeping in touch with as many people as I can. See how just to make sure that they've settled in okay and no further
yeah,
problems.
yeah,
But it was was good to see that the residents, there were a lot of there was a lot of fear, and there was a lot of crime, but that was just me. Um,
I
hopefully,
mean, mate, I think that
uh,
was just me.
it was just one of those weeks that you, if somebody wrote it in a book, you wouldn't think anything like that would happen.
Yeah, yeah.
You'd think, oh, they'd have plans and contingencies in place, but it did happen, and then we saw the best of what BCBC, housing authorities, private landlords, the support groups have to offer.
Mm.
Um,
But
and
I think you make an interesting point there. Like in terms of those plans that you have in those sort of contingency plans.
yeah,
I think what is terrifying for me is we've reached such a point in civil society, having had, I mean, essentially a decade of austerity from central government, that we're now facing a point where it's very hard to have contingency plans because ultimately, I mean, the sad reality is that the accommodation you were in was the contingency plan. Like
yeah,
that's the wedge we're getting to of
yeah,
the as officers will tell you, like having people in hotels is never ever something we would ever envisage 3 years ago, and we're now at a point where we have no choice but to look for any form of safe residence. And this is due to cuts. It is due to local authorities facing not just a decade's worth of austerity, but also a point where everyday people are faced with a reality of wages haven't increased, bill prices have gone up, food prices have gone up, rent has gone through the roof. And so more and more people are struggling to keep a roof over their heads. And that, and that's what I think is really sad, is that we're now at the point where even the contingency fails. And how do you plan for the contingency beyond the contingency?
yeah,
Like what, you get to the point where there's nothing left. And that's sort of where we are at the moment. I mean, I'm really glad that I think I saw yesterday that the devolved government have requested a meeting with the new chancellor, because what's far, it's very easy to forget that, like, when you're consuming council services, that all of this is, from a long line of where the money
yeah,
came from, right? And what we're going to have to face up to, and what is terrifying for us as councillors, is that we're really facing a reality next year where inflation is going to be through the roof. People have not got more money in their pockets, so we're going to have to make choices where council tax is not going to be able to go up much because no one can afford it, but equally the cost of buying things for us as well is now 10% higher than it was last year. And how do you build, after a decade of lower money from Westminster, how do you build that resilience? Like, how do you, at this point, like, I mean, as you will have seen this week, our officers did amazing work, but there's probably, like, there's one officer now where there used to be three. And that's the reality we're facing, where we're going to face more and more reduction in funding. And then you get to the point where, if we didn't have that team there, how would any of this have happened? And that's what terrifies me, is that next year, when we're probably going to see more and more people struggling, how do we find the resources to find good results like this?
yeah. You focus a lot on decade of austerity, and don't get me wrong, that has a big part to do with it. But it's
Yeah.
the failure of successive governments going all back to, I'd say, probably 1945 after the war, taking on the debts for Russia and France during the war. But our own well-devolved Welsh government have their own things to blame, with a lot of public money being wasted on the M4 Roof Road, on the Ebervale Raceway, on even in Bridgend, on the site that Ineos was going to go to. They spent £5 million doing that, and we didn't even get Ineos in the end. So it's okay to blame one. They've got their faults, and they have contributed to this, but our own government in Wales have contributed to this. Well, over £100 million was spent on the consultations and everything, the M4 Relief Road. That's £100 million. I'm sure county borough councils would have loved to have had in this time. 30 odd million on the Ebervale Raceway.
Look, I mean, I think this thing, I think
I know sometimes we've got to take risks to build up investment. We've got to do that at some point, but at some point you've got to say we've spent so much, we've got to go through with it, because it will eventually increase. The M4 Relief Road is the example, because it would have increased traffic coming into Wales and not caused blocked artery like it does in Newport. Sometimes you have to continue with that risk instead of just wasting that money.
And I think actually that's an interesting point, and something I would agree with, in terms of, I think there are definitely moments that, because of the sort of movement of the political settlement that we've seen over the last 20 years from the point of devolution, there's definitely moments where we all need to be better at the joined up thinking. And I think you're right. Like, there are moments where Welsh government, I think, well-meaningly have looked at things, but haven't necessarily thought it through to the end, where you end up in a situation where, and often, it often falls on local authorities to then deliver the things they've asked for.
But it happens every level of every level of government. Westminster.
Absolutely.
And we've even seen it in community councils, especially what's happened in Bridgend over the last 5 years with the 3 community councils. We can't say it's unique to Westminster or unique to Welsh government. No. It does trickle down. Everywhere has their feelings, and everybody in that regard can do better, no matter who they are. They all can do better with public finances, really.
But I don't think it's just public finances. I think it's more about, the reality is, like, it takes a certain type of person to involve themselves within civil society, right? Like nerds like you and me that like really enjoy local politics, but actually, what we need to think about there is, how do we grow the people getting involved? How do we move beyond it being just people like you and me? Like, how do we reach out for that? And like, how do we?
This is what I'm doing with this channel. I'm trying to get people more involved and and show people that even if it's just getting more people out to vote, that your vote is not wasted. Whoever you vote for, whoever it is, whether it be Independent, Labour, Conservatives, or Green Party, or whatever.
As you said, Independent.
We're not promoting political parties, so please don't do that. We're not promoting any party above anybody else.
I'm just gonna hold my mug.
You can do that. I haven't got my BCI mug today. It's all packed away in the gang. But what I'm saying is, this is what this is for in Bridgend, is to increase, because we've got quite historically low turnouts at every level of local voting, from especially community council, especially by-elections and things like that. And people don't realise, people think, oh, my vote doesn't mean anything. It really, really does. We can look at a classic example of what happened in Brackler. I can't remember what it was. And it came down to essentially a toss of a coin, because there was two candidates, a Tory and a Labour, and it came down to a toss of a coin. And all it needed was one more person to vote.
Wasn't it Pen of A? I think it was Pen of A, wasn't it?
No, it was Brackler East, I think it was, because Brackley's and Coitrahane.
Yes, no, it was. You're right. Yeah.
And that's what it comes down to. And people need to, I think people get involved. There are some fantastic groups out there that love to get involved in the communities, and we should be more focusing back towards being communities again, rather than like it was when my dad was young. The communities all looked after each other, and then they started stretching out as people moving into the area, not really integrating, and they're starting to contract back to being communities again.
Yeah,
and that's where you help get things better.
That's something that I think, in a weird way, and I know that you and I actually talked about this on Thursday. Of the pandemic. Obviously there was many tremendously bad things that came out of the pandemic, but the one thing I would say about that year was it gave, I think, people time to take stock and reflect, but also it did drive people back into local communities, which I think is really wonderful. Like I think certainly, you can see it across Bridgend, like as someone from the valleys. So, I grew up in the Ogmore Valley, and it's wonderful to see, and we've got way to go, but it's wonderful to see people in that community starting up small businesses, starting to think, and so much of that came from the pandemic, where it was like, there was a woman in my valley that was like, right, well, so people can't get their shopping, and we have an aging population, and getting to Bridgend or Sarn, which is the nearest supermarket, is really difficult at this point, and they don't want to go out. So how do we solve for that? And they established things that allowed them to take shopping to people, and you started seeing locally produced food as well, like food from local hens, food from lambs on the Buch Mountain, like all of that
as well.
Community, absolutely. And it's really, we do, and what I've said this repeatedly in meetings in my ward, is like, how do I, like, my job, I feel, over the next 5 years in this term, is to make sure that those people in my community have the support to keep that going, and to keep that community spirit going. Because I think it is easy now, everyone's gone back to normal, that we could lose that. And I think that would be a real shame, because I think that's what's, if there's any positive to have come out of COVID, it's that.
Yeah, we went completely off topic then. That's what generally happens on the show. We start talking about the topic, and then we completely go on a tangent to other things. But we'll recap now, because you said you could give me about 20 minutes, half an hour. We're coming up to half an hour now, so I won't keep you long. Your staff, you need to give them a massive congratulations for what they've done. I don't think there'd be many other staff around the country that would have been able to do it in essentially 4 days, really.
Yeah.
And I'm still doing it Friday morning, because not everything was completely sorted for some people, me being one of them, which was me being stubborn. But I had to think about myself.
As it should be.
Yeah, I had to think about myself at that point. And they, as I said on my post on the Political Outlook, they performed a miracle, really. A miracle. I think they deserve a huge congratulations. I know Bridgend County Borough Council staff get a lot of flack, but they can hold their heads up high this week. They've done such an amazing job, and so have the Valleys to Coast Link, Havard, and Wales and West, Pobble as well, because they were down all week with us as well, and the Woolwich put in an effort, and even the landlords around the areas have searched to see what they can do as well, which has been fantastic. And it's a shame it takes a crisis to really pull together like that. It really,
but I think there's what what I've hoped for and what I've said to officers at the end of the week, because, you know, obviously it is that thing of like, you know, as you've said, in those 4 days, officers had one very specific thing to do, and that's what they were doing.
Yeah.
What I've said to officers on Friday is, look, there's a lot of learnings that need to be taken from the situation we found ourselves in. And it's not just that sort of forward planning thing of like, well, you know, how do we ensure this never happens again? But also, you know, there are things that can be done better. And I do think that the community, as we've talked about, you know, it was a Herculean effort. Like, it was unbelievable what has been achieved in essentially, as you say, 4.5 days. But how do we, you know, much like we talked about with COVID, like, how do we take that nugget and sort of instill it into what we do going forward? Like, how do we ensure, and this is where I'm coming from, like, as a new cabinet member, as a new councillor, I want to make sure that our RSLs and other partners like that, so V2C, Link, Harvard, Wales and West, etc., like, how do we, as a non-property owning borough, ensure that we are getting the best partnership we can have with the landlords to ensure that, like, because, you know, this is the thing, like, we are facing a level of housing need that is so beyond what anyone could have imagined 10 years ago, let alone 20 years ago. And how, like, we have to deal with that. Like, we have to deal with that. I have no idea how we deal with that, but it's
only going to get worse.
Yeah, absolutely.
In the short term, it's only going to get worse.
Absolutely. This is what I was saying to officers this week, is like, you need to be reflecting on that this isn't the thin end of the wedge. Like, this is the start of something. This isn't the end of something. And we have to pull together around that. And that, you know, it takes the whole council to do that. And I do mean that. Like, and for my part, I hope that, you know, I can work with members across the floor and across the council to do this, because I think we do have to reflect. And what is really important about this week, and what I think we should be really proud about, is that at no point did anyone involved in these conversations think about party politics, right?
No,
like, no one was talking about whether you were Labour or BCI or Linvey or like whatever. Everyone was just there for it, and we should be really proud of that. And we need to do that more. And we need to be working constructively. You know, the executive of the council should be held to account and should be scrutinised. But equally, we need to be coming from a fair playing field, right? Like, opposition for opposition's sake isn't the way forward.
No.
But, you know, in short, like, taking moments like this where, you know, what everyone said at the start of every meeting this week was, okay, but how are the residents? Like, what is happening with these people? And it could have been so easy to forget you guys as actual individuals, as actual people, and get lost in the sort of process. And actually, what we should be proud of across Bridgend is that no one did that. Everyone was like, how do we make sure that these people have the best outcomes that we can deliver? And I think that is something we have to build on.
Yeah, I think what would have been best for the residents in their eyes this week would have been from day one. We weren't told by the council that we had to be out by midday Friday until Tuesday. It would have been best from day one Monday that we had somebody down there based, even if it's just 9 till 5, who could liaise with the residents, what they needed, and back to the council. Unfortunately, I think most of it was flowing through me, and it was.
I mean, as I said to you, like, you know, I mean, thank you so much for doing that, but also it shouldn't have been you. It shouldn't have been put on your shoulders to do that, and that is something that I've already reflected to officers. And I think, you know, I imagine it was born from limited staff and, you know, ultimately like a lot of staff needing to be in the office to try and solve the problem. But equally, yes, I absolutely agree that it should have been from the moment that we knew that, you know, it was likely, because the other problem we had is that, you know, we were negotiating down to the wire on this. You know, we were trying to get the best solutions for everyone. But yes, I absolutely agree, and I think it's something we have to look at in terms of going forward, is that if we ever do find ourselves in a situation like this again, that we ensure that we have boots on the ground to talk to people. Because I think one of the biggest issues we did have, as you will have experienced, is, and I'm not sure how we could have solved this, but having someone there who could have instantly dispelled rumors or
I
mean, the problem we ultimately had was, and not to get into this, because we both know that like it's difficult to get into the deep bits, but like ultimately the biggest issue we had was that the owners of the hotel were telling people things that weren't necessarily correct, and that led to because the result of that was ultimately you being told something, then residents asking you to go and ask councillors about that. And you know, and that you know, as we both experienced, you know, that takes, you know, an hour to get a response, or like you know, it takes time
longer.
Yeah, exactly. And what we need to reflect on there is, and I think it is really good that Martin managed to come down Wednesday, Thursday, Friday to try and do that, in terms of being like having that one voice of being like, no, I'm a council officer, I can tell you exactly what's happening, and it isn't that. Like, you know, it's not what they're saying, and you know, that's something we do need to reflect on in future, of how do we ensure, because and not from a political or small p point, but from a point of not giving residents false information and allowing them to think that actually, you know, it's going to be fine, that by Friday actually a deal's going to be agreed or whatever, but like actually ensuring that the important information,
all the biggest information that us residents were getting, that this is all BCBC is doing, and they don't really care about you, and they're using them in a game, you in a game. And that the reason why I made that phone call to Amanda, and I essentially was there for the residents, was because none of the residents knew they could ring their local councillor to get onto this. It's people don't know. We're in housing, and they tried to ring the housing officers, who are busy anyway trying to sort this mess out and do the best for us, and it was very difficult to get through. It was sometimes that we couldn't get through because it said, I'm sorry, it's too busy, please call again later, or you were waiting over an hour on the phone, or you tried to email, and the people you're trying to speak to are the people who are out trying to sort this mess out, and it got difficult. That's why that's why I did that this week, because I knew who I could speak to. I had several different options. I'm doing this. I know a lot of people I can give a call to and say, "Can you help? Can you get this rolling?"
But I think, you know, I think the thing there is, and it's something we all have to reflect on, is that I think it's always surprising, right, for people like you and I that take an interest in local government and politics, how few people actually understand what local councillors can do and what they're there for. And that is something that, and again, though, I think this is, you know, a question of austerity. Like, whereas, you know, 20 years ago, the council probably could have spent a certain amount of money to promote what local authorities did and what councillor, you know, what you could go and speak to your councillor about. Whereas that information sort of almost got lost as the years have gone on. And as disenfranchisement has grown, I think there are fewer and fewer people who understand what we're there for. And you know, one of the things that I always reflect on is getting, you know, in my own patch of getting people to understand that I'm a councillor, but I'm not the council.
No.
And like I'm your representative to council. I'm not
Yeah.
the council. I don't control budgets. Well, I mean, I do control budgets in cabinet, but like, do you know what I mean? It's like I don't.
They
I'm
expect
not.
you when they
Yeah,
come
I'm
to
not.
you. They expect
I can pick up the phone
a,
and be like,
a straight fix straight away.
yeah,
There are
exactly. Like
procedures in
I have.
place.
Yeah, exactly. But then
Basically,
when
you're the
there is
messenger to the council from the people. That
yeah,
is
but
the best way to
when there is
describe it.
situations like this, though, right, where you can put, political with a small pressure on officers to be
Yeah.
like, no, this needs to be sorted, and here's why, and I am instructing you as a cabinet member to do that, is where we can make a difference. And I think
Yeah.
it's hard to be to sort of bring it down to individual cases, but like what we can do from this, and what I want to do from this is, and I really hope, as I said to the scrutiny leads on, I think it was Thursday, on Wednesday maybe, was that to Freya and Alex, and is that we should have scrutiny for this, because this is where it's important, right? Of like actually learning where we could have done more and done better, and get people to understand what we can and can't do is really important. Because I think this situation has shown that real flaw, right? In that individual businessmen are free to say whatever they want.
Yeah.
We, as a council, have a legal responsibility not to put the council into situations that could lead us to be questioned in court. And as you know, as we've talked individually, I'm very much biting my lip about what I'm saying.
I can see, but I know there's legal things and things like that, but at the end of the day, and I'll say this without my political head on or anything like that, and residents, purely as a resident, we don't care about the legal side of it. We're being told different things from both sides, and at the end of the day, we don't care. Didn't care whether the council got taken to court, whether the owners would just be whatever. There has to be something, especially when it affects a large group like that of seriously vulnerable people. They need to know the exact truth. I understand the legality sides of it, but as a layman, as a normal person,
but that's why, in a way,
that's what creates the biggest fear is you don't know why this is happening. That's one of the biggest fears. You don't know why this is happening.
But that's why I think it is important to have that's ultimately why I came down on Wednesday and Thursday, because what I was conscious of is that obviously officers are limited in what they can say, but what I can do as a cabinet member, and almost caring less what the owners of the hotel thought of me, is that I could come down and say things more than what officers would be able to say because of commercial negotiations, and that's where we have to get this right, is that is making sure that when you are in these situations, that whether it's a cabinet member or someone like that is able to come down, and what was really important to me was coming down and giving you guys the biggest amount of truth that I could give you of what was happening, because I do think it's unfair that ultimately you were sort of caught in the middle of something that wasn't of your making, that wasn't where ultimately being in those hotels wasn't where you wanted to be in the first place.
No.
And then and you're left in that in between thing, and that's why I think it is important. And something I would say is that, and this is where I come from fundamentally, like this is what I feel in my core, is that one of the reasons that I stood for election, and what I would hope everyone who stands for election feels, is that responsibility to tell people the truth. And I know it gets lost in, like, with politics with a big P, where people are like, oh, politicians lie. And I'm like, the best politicians don't. The best politicians want to give the most truth to the most people most of the time. And that's where I come from. And I think that's where a lot of us come from. I think, again, this is where we need to celebrate this week, is that it did show the best of all sides and the best of all of us in how we work together and how we deal with each other. I'm just going to say that, I probably need to jump off here.
Yes, I was going to say we're running over.
But to be honest, mate, I knew this was going to happen, because I can talk for the world, and I love having a chat about politics. So this is the thing about my laptop is now telling me that my battery's about to die. So just waiting for the moment where I just cut off. It's probably better for me to say that I'll jump off here.
I won't. You can come on. I'll bring you on sometime. You can talk about yourself, what your background is, what you're trying to do. So we had a different topic today, so we can go on those tangents and how you perceive things and how you see things, because it's always good to get all sides of people from the political spectrum, the views, because then people can make a better judgment on what is going on out there and who they think will best represent them. Anyway, thank you very much, Councillor Goode, and I hope you'll probably speak to me before next time, I'm sure of it. Oh, I think we've lost him. Yeah. Anyway, I think we've lost Councillor Goode now. There we go. Anyway, thank you, everybody. I hope you've come to light again. My thanks to everybody who worked hard for us this week. From my point of view, the first call Monday morning to Amanda Williams, who got the ball rolling for us residents. And from there, everybody was just piling in to help all of our residents. And thank you so much. All the council staff, the outside authorities that jumped in and helped, private landlords, Pobble and the Woolwich, brilliant. Anyway, thank you. I'll see if I can do rustle up some councillors to do a live stream at 7:00 tonight. Talk about something different for once. Let's talk about areas and see what else is happening in the county, because it's been a few months since I've done a proper live stream. Anyway, thank you very much. I'm going to say goodbye now and maybe see you later at 7 p.m. All right, thank you.